early humans lived in sync with nature and preserved the ecosystems that sustained them. Today, some of the best practices we have for protecting our environment stem from ancient knowledge. But in the era of climate change, science is also key to helping us cope with worsening weather extremes. Today on Eco India, we discover the benefits of traditional and modern approaches. Hello and welcome. I'm Sanuta Raghu. Let's start in Western Maharashtra. Vultures are endemic to this region and play a huge role in maintaining a balance among species due to their position high up in the food chain. But these birds of prey are going extinct at an alarming rate. Blame it on deforestation or the fatal chemicals they are exposed to through the carcasses they feed on. An organization in the region, along with local villagers, seems to have a solution to save the vulture. Let's take a look.
There's a buzz of activity in Mahat tonight. Just before midnight, volunteers gather on the edge of this village in Maharashtra, awaiting the delivery of a buffalo carcass. A breakfast feast for vultures the next morning.
In the morning, we have seen 3 to 4 flocks over here. Flock of 40 to 80 vultures, it has been visited here. Now, there are 40 to 60 vultures which are feeding. The feeding is going on.
Prem Sagar Mistry runs the NGO Seascap. He and his team look after a small population of vultures in the area. The birds are dependent on feedings like these. In the 1980s, India was home to more than 40 million vultures. But in the mid-1990s, there was a sudden, dramatic drop in numbers. By 2017, they had shrunk to just 19,000. The culprit? Diclofenac, a veterinary drug used to treat inflammation in cattle. It proved to be fatal to vultures feeding on the carcasses of treated cows.
That drug, it remains in muscles of that carcasses. When the cattle died, maybe 2 or 5 or more injections, it deposits that diclofenac, whatever the remains in the muscles. And when the vultures, they feed that carcasses, the diclofenac enter into their gut. And they got the swelling of gut problem, then the swelling of stomach and the kidney failure. And so the bird became dizzy and it fell down.
In 2006, the government responded by banning the use of diclofenac. But it remains available and is still in use. And there is another problem. Deforestation has led to a severe loss of the bird's natural habitat. The impact has been huge, says Nathuram Mahadik, the former community leader of a neighboring village.
When I was young, our elders used to dispose of cattle carcasses. And within 15 to 20 minutes, the vultures would clean them up. It was really helpful. Back then, the trees were very tall, and the vultures would build nests in them. But there are very few tall trees left today. The birds need tall trees. They never build nests in the lower ones.
Swaths of natural forest have had to give way to crops like cashew, mango, teak and shala trees. And that has fueled conflict between farmers and vultures. On coconut plantations, for example, vultures like to build their nest in the palms. Farmers' livelihoods are threatened if they don't interfere. Vulture chicks are at risk if they do. The scavengers are vital to the ecosystem, but their dwindling numbers mean dead animals are often left to rot, a hotspot for bacteria and source of disease. As a result, people now bury carcasses, depriving vulture stocks of food for themselves and their offspring.
Only vultures are giving one egg in a year, and so if that chick is facing the problem of starvation, then that generation fails to, to give new progeny.
Prem Sagar Mistry and his team of 40 volunteers have spent almost 2 decades researching vultures in Maharashtra. He believes it is essential to grow the local population. He's introduced so-called vulture restaurants. His team regularly puts out food for the birds at different locations.
Whenever we couldn't get carcasses, we managed to purchase the meat from meat shop keepers. So there is a union of those meat shopkeepers, and from those union we collect waste on Sunday, especially on Friday, on Thursday, and then we collected that used to drop over that feeding ground, and in this way we have strictly avoided the starvation of the chicklings in the nest.
It's also been really important to get local villagers on board. With their help, the NGO receives notification of animal carcasses in the area. These can be then collected for the vultures.
They explained everything to us very clearly, and as the project doesn't have any negative effects either for us or our land, we are happy to support it. After all, this is public land. It belongs to the government, and if the project is benefiting the vultures, then why not?
A number of rescue centers offer treatment for injured birds and fledglings that have fallen out of their nest. Prem Sagar Mistry and his team care for them. Once they weigh more than 2 kilos, they are released back into the wild. The work of the NGO is funded by donors and through guided tours for, among others, students and school pupils. Some go on to become volunteers themselves, like 13-year-old Sarah.
Vultures are very important in life because they clean our surrounding and they are endangered species.
In 1999, there were just 20 vultures living here in the region. Now, thanks to the work of Prem Sagar Mistry and his team, their numbers have grown to 350. The Indian government has also laid out an action plan to protect the birds. Nonetheless, it will be many years before the population reaches its former strength.
How do we deal with our dead? It's a question as old as humanity itself. Over millennia, traditions have evolved to include rituals that help us make peace with our loved ones who have passed on and process grief. We enter a delicate territory when we question the environmental impact of some of our funeral traditions. Our reporter ventures there to ask, is there a green way to be let go after you die?
The living do have a significantly bigger impact on the planet. But with around 150,000 people dying every day, the ways we say goodbye to our loved ones add up. Neanderthals were found to have buried their dead, which makes the tradition over 70,000 years old. The other tradition we follow, cremation, is also likely to be at least 20,000 years old. Which one you get is mostly still decided by religion. Christian, Muslim, and Jewish communities traditionally bury the departed, while Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Jains usually cremate. But in the modern world, neither are great solutions. In different parts of the world, people are running into different problems. Islands and densely populated regions are running out of space. In Hong Kong, a space on the ground or a niche for remains can cost up to $150,000, and waiting lists can last for years. The UK could fill up many of its cemeteries soon. And Santos in Brazil has already built a 14-story vertical cemetery to house its dead as the ground runs out of space. The most obvious thing to do would be to recycle graves. In countries including Greece and the Netherlands, graves are leased for between 3 and 30 years, and then remains are normally shifted out to make space for the newly dead.
But places like the US doesn't have that kind of system. The UK, Australia, New Zealand don't have a similar kind of system. Then that kind of becomes problematic because we're not reusing the space we have.
Julie Rugg has one of the most morbid jobs around, studying communities and the ways in which they deal with their dead.
The trouble that we have at the moment, it's all about scale. So when the numbers are small, there'll be huge swathes of population that still have traditional practices that work because they're in very small communities, and that's fine. It's when you move into very big cities, you start to think, we've got to organise this better. We had cities that doubled and tripled in size in 10 years.
But space is one concern, and it's more of a planning problem, really. Environmentally speaking, burials and cremations are becoming increasingly difficult on the planet. The most impactful is probably the Western, resource-intensive Christian burial, especially in countries that require bodies to be placed in coffins or caskets. Just in the US, over 1 million tons of concrete are laid into vaults each year. Tens of thousands of tons of steel, copper, and bronze are molded into caskets to be laid underground, and millions of acres of forest cut down. Bodies are now also routinely embalmed. That's when body fluids are drained and replaced by chemicals to give them a more lifelike appearance for the funeral. The practice effectively died with the mummies and only came back in a big way in the mid-19th century, when unpreserved bodies began literally exploding. During the American Civil War, soldiers were dying on the battlefield far away from home. So when their bodies were being brought back, the sweltering heat caused a buildup of gases inside the simple coffins they were using at the time. It wasn't a pretty picture for the grieving families back home. So battle surgeons began embalming bodies again. With time, the fluids began to include arsenic and mercury, and more recently, cancer-causing formaldehyde. These have been known to seep out of coffins and into soil, contaminating the groundwater around cemeteries. So, with increasing environmental concerns and rising resource costs, more people in the West are choosing cremations over burials. But cremations can be just as toxic. In the UK, it was found that 16% of mercury in the air came from tooth fillings from cremated bodies. And beyond that, both open and electric cremations release millions of tons of carbon dioxide and toxic emissions into the air, including sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide. So around the world, a number of people have been working on options for those who want to lower their impact in death. So let's meet our clients, who often have death on their minds. I think he would pick alkaline hydrolysis. Also known as water cremation, this process has recently become legal and available for humans in a few countries. How it works is the body is submerged in a sealed chamber that contains a water-alkali mix at high temperature and pressure. After a couple of hours, only bones remain, which are brittle and easy to crush. So the family can take ashes home. This is being called one of the greenest methods because despite the use of high temperatures,
it's got 6 times lower carbon footprint than flame cremation. It uses 7 times less energy. The public are actually choosing it over flame.
I bet you're wondering what happens to all the leftovers that dissolved in the water.
When we're done, you can also get the essence back. So that's the liquid part of the body.
The liquid can be bottled up and is actually nutritious enough to become fertilizer.
We've had people put it in pint jars and give it to the person's friend when they die.
But not everybody can stomach that idea. Ew! And that's one thing that holds such technology back, the ick factor. Like Jack. His destiny is to return simply to the soil. Have you heard of a living coffin made entirely of mushrooms?
That actually enables people to no longer pollute the earth, but actually to enrich it, because myceliums are like the largest recyclers of this planet, and I mean they want to turn us into plant food, so why not let them?
Mushroom coffins take around 45 days to turn themselves and the body into compost, which could potentially help the soil. You are centuries old, so more of a traditionalist, aren't you? Well, maybe then just an old-fashioned burial, but you can make it green.
Green burial is the burial of an unembalmed body in a vaultless grave, usually situated in some natural setting like a field or a woodland or a meadow. The whole idea is to allow the body to decompose naturally and rejoin the elements.
These burials are similar to traditional ones, like most Muslims still do, but with biodegradable materials. They still do take up space though, so as long as that's available, it's still a green and sanitary option.
Now, Indian farmers are used to the vagaries of the environment they work in. But climate change is making droughts more severe and monsoons more irregular. That's made life hard for millions of farmers who time their planting and harvests to the annual rains. We met one who took to the internet for help and found it in Germany.
Like millions of other farmers in India, Ravi Patidar wonders every summer, when will the monsoon come and how much rain will it bring?
I'm totally dependent on the monsoon. Without it, we can't do anything on our farm. We can't start sowing seeds until the monsoon begins.
Climate change has made monsoons unpredictable. Without the southwest monsoon rains, there will be no harvest for more than 100 million farmers in the country. Ravi Patidar lives in Janakpur, a village in the state of Madhya Pradesh. For him, the harvests aren't just crucial for his own livelihood. The 38-year-old and his wife, Sangeeta, sent their son to a boarding school, and it isn't cheap. They want him to have more opportunities than they had. The farmer also takes care of his elderly parents. Unpredictable monsoons would jeopardize the harvests. Ravi Patidar needs to know when it will rain at least 30 days in advance. That way, he can plow early enough so the seeds are already in the soil when it starts raining. The country's weather reports weren't precise enough, so he sought help elsewhere, online.
I searched on Google and found one of Elena Soroviatkina's articles. Later, I came across her email address and wrote to her. She answered and sent me her forecast.
Elena Soroviatkina is a Russian scientist at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. She developed a simple model for predicting monsoons in central India, when they occur and when they end. The project is financed with money from the International Climate Protection Initiative.
We analyzed data, and we found two critical points on Indian subcontinent. If we compare two temperatures, one in Eastern Ghats during the year and another one in North Pakistan during the year, we will find that these temperature curves intersect twice. One, first, at the onset of monsoon in central India. At another time, it's withdrawal of monsoon. It's unbelievable finding.
Ravi Patidar relied on the researchers' forecast and fared well. The monsoon withdrew in the middle of October, more than 2 weeks later than normal. But Elena Soroviatkina predicted it would do so, 70 days in advance. The farmer planted soybeans that can survive an extended monsoon period, and it paid off. His harvest was good.
These soybeans withstood heavy rainfall. They suffered no damage, and I can have a good harvest. I was able to achieve that by choosing these soybeans and relying on Elena's forecast.
But how many farmers in India know about Soroviatkina's forecast? And how did those who do find out about it? At this workshop, led by the Agricultural University in the state of Telangana, farmers are learning how to survive in this era of climate crisis. They suggest that farmers use more climate-resilient seeds and utilize more efficient irrigation methods. Consultants also inform farmers about Elena Soroviatkina's forecasts via WhatsApp or email. There are more than 5.5 million farmers in the state of Telangana. This is the India Meteorological Department in Pune, the government's weather agency. Elena Soroviatkina is widely respected among India's monsoon experts. Her predictions are welcome, but only as an input to the meteorology officials' own models for predicting rainfall. They think publicizing them as a separate monsoon forecast would be problematic.
There will be confusion among the user which one to take. So we have to generate, one single output, and to generate that one single output, I'm sure, there are many Elenas, and we need, I said, many Elenas, to contribute this type of information.
During a pause in the harvest, Ravi Patidar has a Zoom date.
Hello, Ravi. Hello, Ravi. How are you? It's so nice to meet you.
I would like to tell you that, ma'am, I used your monsoon prediction and sowed long-term maturity soybean seeds, and it survived the rains. And my crops are saved, and I am able to earn my livings.
So good to hear this.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
But while the monsoon forecasts help people adapt to climate change, they won't solve the underlying problem.
The main problem of climate change is emission. And we need to reduce emission and save our planet all together.
Ravi Patidar and his soybeans have done well this season, as they did last year. With the help of a scientist in Germany, the unpredictable monsoons are a bit more foreseeable.
Now, just like India, Indonesia too has torrential rains during the monsoon season. Much of this water could be harvested and directed to regions with water scarcity. A village pastor in Java is doing just that. Let's take a look.
Here in Bundar, a village in Indonesia, it's harvesting time. When the heavy showers start to fall during the rainy season, Bundar is ready. Almost everyone collects as much water as they can. Prasetyo Widi stores the rain in a large tank. He sometimes collects as much as 100,000 litres, which can last for up to a year, and the quality of the water is good. His family uses it to wash, cook, and even drink, which isn't true of everyone. Some think rainwater isn't good enough for that.
Tapi kalau pas ada
when visitors come, or friends from the city, we have to tell them, sorry, it's rainwater. We often worry that they won't drink it then.
Many Indonesians buy bottled water, but in Bundar that's no longer necessary. Most here now disinfect their own water with electrolysis. An electric current is passed through the water, which causes a chemical reaction that kills microbes and increases the pH value, and with it, the water quality. It was Pastor Romo Kajito who taught them how to do it. He's turned Bundar into a rainwater community, of which there are now 80 across the country.
People used to complain about the rain because they got wet in it. Now they're happy when they see the rain coming down. Their attitude is changing. The villagers can save more money now. They don't have to buy drinking water anymore. They just have to collect and treat it.
For Pastor Kajito, water is the source of all life, life's very essence. He spent years experimenting in his small laboratory, looking for a simple method to improve rainwater quality. His aim from the start was to make sure everyone had direct access to free drinking water. In recent years, the control over potable water has passed into the hands of private companies, with the support of the government. Privatization has meant that many Indonesians now have to buy their drinking water. Experts encourage the practice of harvesting rainwater.
We know that the potential of water, of rainwater in Indonesia is abundant. It's a lot of about 2,000 until 4,000 millimeter per year. Traditionally, a lot of people in Indonesia already use rainwater. Only because of new technology, they left the rainwater technology. We will bring back the people to understand, to develop technology for rainwater harvesting.
Hydrologist Agos Mariono says storing rainwater is one way of getting through extended droughts. What Bundar is doing could one day be common practice all across the country. Pastor Romo Kajito is pleased that the many training courses and discussions have changed things in the village.
People should love water. Treasuring it, being aware of it, treating it creatively is all part of loving water. And when we love something, we have a positive attitude towards it. It doesn't matter if it's rainwater or comes from a well, we should value it.
Valuing water would certainly go a long way towards ensuring that future generations in Bundar and other Indonesian villages will have access to a healthy water supply.
Just like the pastor we just met, using traditional knowledge means that we don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. Write to us at ecoindia@dw.com if you are solving modern problems with traditional solutions. I'll see you again next week with many more such thought-provoking stories. Until then, goodbye.